Hello, must readers. I'm Erin Popelka. I curate must-read fiction, a place for people who know that life is better with a novel in hand. And I am so delighted because I'm here today with Elise Hooper, the author of The Other Alcott, which we have a copy of. It released on Tuesday, this brand new beautiful novel. A little bit about Elise. She is a New Englander by birth and now lives with her husband and 2 daughters in the Pacific Northwest. When she is not writing, she teaches American history and literature to high school students. And The Other Alcott is her first novel. So welcome, Elise.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here together with you in the beautiful Mercer Island Public Library.
Right, we're lucky they're having us.
Yes, it's delightful to be here. So The Other Alcott just came out on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, September 6th, September 5th.
That date will be forever sort of ingrained in my memory now.
Indeed, the birth of your first novel.
Yes, my 3rd child.
Yes, absolutely. And so it is hot off the presses. So please tell me about the book.
So The Other Alcott tells the story of May Alcott, who is largely known most to the world as Amy March, from her sister's semi-fictional autobiographical novel, that's a mouthful, Little Women. So when Louisa May Alcott wrote Little Women, she was loosely basing it on her own childhood and her upbringing with her 3 sisters. So May, the world knows Louisa May Alcott. Everyone knows Louisa May Alcott. She was kind of the J.K. Rowling of her time, really, back in the Little Women came out in the 1868, but in the 1870s, she was the best-selling author at times in America, male or female. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so the world really knows her. But what I found as I started digging into my research, having loved the Alcotts for a long time, is that May Alcott, this youngest sister, has this fascinating life that has largely gone untold. And so I really felt it was important to bring this 4th Alcott to the world's attention. I mean, that sounds sort of grandiose, I suppose, but I really felt she had a compelling story that needed to be told.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's really hard when you have, a sister who is so famous and so prominent, and then, but one of 4, and then the other sisters are sort of in the shadow, but clearly have their own strengths.
Yes.
Absolutely.
They were a very progressive family, and so all these women were pretty forward thinkers for their time. And so it's exciting. I mean, 2 extraordinary women living under one roof. There are all these wonderful books we read today about the such and such wife or daughter. And so it's amazing, I think, to have a woman who's maybe been living in the shadows of another woman. That's pretty remarkable for the 19th century.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And so much of this book, because it is historical fiction, I imagine you had plenty of research to do.
Yes.
And so I'd love to hear a little bit about, kind of both the research and how that informed the novel, but also because, this is a real person and it's not a biography.
Right.
I'd love to talk more about that line between history and fiction, and both your research and how that played into your process creating the novel.
Well, one of the amazing things to write, let me back up a little. When I started this novel, I thought I was actually going to be writing about Louisa May Alcott because she's, again, who we all know. But what I discovered was she had had this interesting life of, she had been toiling so hard for so long as a writer. And during the American Civil War, she served as a Civil War nurse and came down with typhoid fever and was treated, as people were during that era, with mercury. As a result, the rest of her life, she suffered from mercury poisoning.
Wow.
Historians and doctors now believe. So when Little Women came out in 1868, and actually next year is the 150th anniversary of Little Women's publishing.
This is perfect timing right here, perfect timing.
Which was an accident too when I started writing this. I did not know that. But so in 1868, it was this really overnight success, and it changed life for the Alcotts forever. And so right as Louisa achieves this great success, her health has deteriorated to the point where she really couldn't do much. She couldn't do many of the things she had always dreamed of doing as far as travel and a life of adventure. And she was really pressured to continue supporting her family through writing. So there wasn't really a story there. I mean, I hate to say it, but she was largely writing all the time. She was very prolific. She wrote over 15 novels, lots of short stories, essays, tons of letters and journals. So when I started doing all my research and all these biographies on the Alcotts, of which there are many, I just kind of couldn't find my story with Louisa unless I really wanted to fictionalize, really go off track and make something up, really. But May, I was able to assemble a timeline of where she was, what she was doing during certain periods. But she didn't keep a bunch of journals or write even a ton of letters that survived to today. So I felt like I had the space to really imagine her life and create this character who felt very authentic and true to her period and true to all of the research I was doing. But there was room for adventure and an emotional journey in her story that I just felt had been really sort of trawled over already in the case of Louisa. So May provided very rich research. Again, I went with all these biographies of the Alcotts. They have lots of letters, journals. There is an unpublished journal that May left that I read at Orchard House. They have it in their archives. And I studied her art. And I also studied many of the women pursuing art from that era. This is kind of the beginning of many women, well, I should say sort of a small pioneering group that led to many women studying art, both here in America and overseas in Europe. And so there were some great biographies, again, letters. I studied all of those to kind of assemble this picture of May and what her day-to-day life would have been like, and maybe what was also on her mind and the challenges she was facing. So I also did things like checking railroad timetables and menus of what did you eat when you were on a steamship. So there were all these things of just what was daily life really like for people in the 1870s, and then specifically what was realistic to the Alcotts for this period. So I got to immerse myself in the world of the Impressionists and Boston in the 1870s. I mean, I did everything on Google Maps walking to see kind of what it would be like to walk along, how long were these walks they all went on, and get a sense of what they were seeing. In some of these cities, London, Rome, Paris, you can still see, the architecture that they would have seen as they walked on. So I love doing research. I mean, that is at my core so much of what I love about history. So there was no shortage of things for me to study and look at to develop this genuine picture of the Alcotts.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And Boston is such a fantastic city because so much has.
Yes.
You can walk down an alley, walk down a street that really is unchanged for 150 years.
Yeah. And I should back up too. I'm from that area. I grew up in right outside of Concord, Mass. So I had visited the Alcotts home for years. I went to drama camp there when I was a kid. So, and Boston is near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time there over the years. So it really took me back home in a lot of ways to write this novel and to celebrate this wonderful area with so much history and so many fascinating people. So it was truly a dream project for me.
Oh, absolutely. And so you grew up very close to the Orchard House, the Alcotts house.
Yes.
And so when did you first read Little Women as a girl? And like how, clearly it has stuck with you enough that you wanted to really jump back into it. When did you first start and why did you decide to come back as an adult?
Well, that's a great question because I don't remember when I first read Little Women. I mean, it is so deep in my psyche. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I've talked about this actually with a lot of people lately, how when we were girls, there was not this amazing amount of middle grade fiction that we have now today. So I feel like everyone read Little Women and Anne of Green Gables and The Secret Garden and The Little Princess, and we poured through, Little House.
Of course.
So we poured through those books, and those really shaped me. I mean, I just remember. So I don't really remember the first time I read Little Women, but I certainly remember going through Orchard House and really trying to kind of imagine the March sisters there and wondering, were the March sisters just like these real Alcott sisters? And that question just stuck with me.
It's a great question.
Because they're a little, we love the March sisters, but they were very, they all had their role, right? There was the tomboy, Louisa, or Jo. There was the dutiful daughter, Meg, the angel, Beth, and this sort of precocious artist, Amy. And I often feel like real women can be kind of a lot of those things all mixed together. So I wanted to figure out, was Louisa in many ways sort of simplifying roles for the sake of her novel? And really, who were these sisters? I really wanted to know that. And oddly, the question has persisted, it stuck with me over the years. And I have been thinking about writing this novel for so long, and finally when my youngest daughter left for kindergarten, I remember the day so clearly. I came home to my big stack of library books and was, all right, here's the day this research project begins, my novel begins. Well, it wasn't quite that smooth. I had so much research to do, a few false starts of thinking I'd found my story, but I can't really explain. I just feel like the Alcotts were kind of in my DNA, that those sisters had imprinted themselves on my life at an early age, and I just was interested in them for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So this felt like the first thing I had to do when it really came time for me to write the story.
I think that there are like some characters in some books, when you find them, it's almost like they vibrate at the same frequency of your own soul.
Absolutely.
You know, and like for me that was Anne Shirley with Anne of Green Gables, and you know, and so I mean I feel like I found a kindred spirit to use Anne's words, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's just a beautiful thing, and it's really, especially at like a young age and an impressionable age, you know, in elementary school, as we're learning to read, as we're developing, you know, kind of both our view of the world and how we see the world and how we think about the world. You know, having those ideas, it really does sort of leave a fingerprint that we carry with us.
I agree, and I think I wanted to always really identify with Louisa because she was this writer and I was interested in writing. But it was kind of May, and the girl who had always drawn on her walls. When you go to Orchard House, you'll see the walls of her bedroom have these sketches all over them that she did in pencil. And I was interested in her. My own artistic skills were not that great, but she seemed kind of like this really optimistic character, this free spirit. I kind of recognized some of her. She did a lot more. Louisa was always writing. And I loved to write, but I wasn't sure that's kind of all I had in me. I wanted to explore other things. And so May called at me. As much as the writer of Louisa drove much of my own passion, I didn't quite, I knew even at that age, have her discipline. And yet this kind of this woman with so much imagination and creativity on the periphery of Louisa's story really started drawing to me. So, and I took art for years, hoping to become like May, and those are sad attempts. And a notebook's put way far away. My sketchbook should not be seen by the rest of the world. So I think you're exactly right. I think these two characters in tandem kind of just really shaped much of what I wanted to be and how I saw myself. So
yeah, and I wonder too, you know, kind of that, you know, with like fine art and drawing and painting, there is sort of that freedom that you said you found in the character May. Whereas with Louisa in the writing, it is more rigid and it's, you know, more of like history. And so I wonder, you know, seeing those, I'm seeing those things come together. And you know, kind of you also work teaching high school students, teaching American literature and American history. So you also straddle both of those worlds.
I do.
Yeah, as well. So how do you know, use that storytelling to connect with your high school students?
That's a great question. I think that history, I mean, there's an important word in history, which is story, right? We are wired to hear stories. That's how we remember things. That's where we develop our visions of ourselves. So I try to use as much storytelling to make history. I mean, we do so much reading from varieties of sources to try to bring history alive for my students. Like all of my colleagues, we all do that. But at times I've taught American studies, which is really fun because we're reading novels or nonfiction books that tie right into the period we're studying. And I think that those moments when you can tie in what is happening in something you're reading and just kind of losing yourself in, and then this more sort of academic subject of history that you're supposed to be studying, I think that's what brings history in many cases, especially for young people, to life. You know, sometimes we watch movies, and there's some wonderful movies out there that maybe deviate from the historical record a bit, but then that's an interesting discussion to have too in itself of what can we learn from this movie, and what liberties did this movie take to tell its story that maybe aren't very accurate to history? And so we can use so many different avenues for teaching history and literature and other subjects as well, that I think it's so fun. I mean, I think anytime you can really engage students to imagine what life was like for other people, I think that's so important to cultivate that empathy and imagination, for sure.
Absolutely, because even in just 150 years, so much has changed. Even
since
in just
last year.
15 years, I know, right? Even since, the difference between you and your students probably feels like a lot more than just a generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And then you are also the mother to 2 daughters.
Yes.
And so I would just love to take a moment and, and I think that it's such a beautiful metaphor and such a beautiful fact that you started the Other Alcott when your youngest daughter went off to kindergarten.
Right.
And so talk to me about, kind of having a creative practice and also being a parent and how you model that for your daughters and how you encourage that for your daughters.
Well, that's a great question as well, because I think for so many years I told myself that to be a writer, I needed to write every day at certain hours, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And when you're a mother of young children or any age, life doesn't work that way. In fact, any day I'm convinced I have a big day of writing ahead of me, I have a sick kid, inevitably. Life just works that way.
Yes.
So when I reached a point where I finally was saying, I'm just writing when I can, which was still every day, but some days it was first thing in the morning, and I did start setting an alarm for 5 a.m. at the height of writing this and my current project to guarantee that I was getting writing time in.
It's quiet time at 5 a.m.
It's painful, but it's necessary. But really, I am sort of a mercenary to the schedule that's in place for each day. I mean, if I get a few hours here, I sit in my minivan some days and write while I'm waiting for a kid to come out of guitar lessons. That is the glamorous life of being a writer.
Indeed. I have often found actually like the grocery store, now they have free Wi-Fi and there's like the booths. They've got the little sit and eat the deli food. It's not glamorous, but it's a great place to get stuff done.
It's true. I drive around a lot and turn everything off when I have an empty car and just hear these voices in my head, and often I'll pull into a parking spot and start writing things down. So I write whenever I get the chance, and hopefully those moments come often, and they do at least come every day. But there's been a certain amount of letting go of some of that control that we look for between teaching, my own schedule, my children. I have to be flexible, and I have to be pretty forgiving with myself about my schedule. So some days if I'm sitting down at 8 p.m., that's the way it goes that day, and maybe it's only an hour, but often I can really drop in for that. Writer's block is not an option in my life. When I have the opportunity to write, I write.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of liberating. I love sometimes I'm sitting at the dining room table. I mean, there's nothing fancy about it. I am just sitting down and with a pile of books next to me. And what's been kind of amazing is that my girls have seen that. I'm not locked away in some room where they can't see me. So they have seen what the creative process looks like, and therefore I think they feel a lot freer to be creative. They don't feel like creativity is something that happens during certain times in a beautiful studio somewhere. They see that it happens in your living room with the dog racing around. You do what you have to. And so my girls have been very close to this project all along. In fact, especially my younger one has really developed as a reader during this. So it's been amazing. I mean, kids know what writing is. I mean, they do it in school. My daughters come home with papers or stories they're writing, and they will sit down next to me and work. And it's really amazing. And sometimes during points where I was writing this, we'd print out the manuscript, and the girls would say, "Oh my gosh, that's a big stack of paper, Mom." And so they've really seen it all along and seen what discipline, dedication looks like. And so my hope, of course, is that they will see that you can do something if you put your mind to it. They will not have any illusions of some special magic dust that exists out there for you to create something that you want. And I see it all the time. My younger one, give her a pencil and she'll just start writing page after page. So her teachers have all commented on it. So I feel like so many people have jobs that their kids have no idea what that job is. right? I mean, my husband even.
Yeah.
I don't really know what he does.
Right.
But my kids know what I do, and therefore when we launched the book on Tuesday and had a party Friday night at Elliott Bay Book Company, the girls were sitting in the front row. They were applauding. One likes to applaud much longer than everyone else. But they have seen this from the beginning, and I think they feel important to it, and they are, because I have a brother who is very dear to me, but having a brother is different from having a sister, I've decided. Sisterhood is a very special bond. So watching my own girls and mostly the joy they experience together, sometimes some not so joyful moments too, but I have learned from all that. I think that has really shaped this book so much. Writing about sisters while watching sisters has been amazing.
Yeah, and actually it's great you bring that up, because that was the other thing I was thinking about, these parallels, that you have 2 daughters and then you've immersed yourself into this world with 4 sisters. Yes, absolutely.
It is fascinating. It's a really interesting dynamic that, as I said, in my own childhood, I didn't experience firsthand, and while I have some wonderful girlfriends who I consider like sisters, real sisters in the same family, it's a different dynamic. They are so close, and you see that love, and I tried to capture that in this book too, of sometimes despite everything, these sisters always come back to each other, you know, that they are bonded together through something indelible. And so it's been a joy to watch my own girls for the most part. And then I can, when they are not getting along, feel like that is important research as well. Right. Because there are moments of tension in this novel that can be informed by watching my own girls as well.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. Life art. Art.
All reflects. All connected.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so the book came out last Tuesday.
Yes.
So I just would love to just bask in the excitement that is week 1 of the Other Alcott being in the world.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
It really has. I could actually tear up, and I'm not going to, but it's been, what a journey. I mean, again, writing, yes, is a solitary affair, to be sitting at a desk working, typing away on a laptop. But in my case, and I think the case of so many other writers, I have needed such a support network to get me through this. So many friends have helped me with picking up children and coordinating schedules. My husband has done so much. So many times we have had to change our plans because I am under a deadline that I must hit, and he's an amazing cook. He really has taken over our household at points. He is a lot of the glue that has held everything together, while I have been at some points writing fairly desperately to keep up with a schedule we're on. But just, it's been a wonderful community. So last week, I mean, it was just messages, the photographs people are sending me of going and buying the book somewhere and holding it up, and it's been amazing, like nothing I could have ever imagined. And at this party on Friday night, when we were able to fill Elliott Bay Book Company, I mean, it was amazing. It was really amazing, because I think there's something that happens maybe when your own children get a little bit older and you could develop a little more breathing space in your life, where there might be something deep in you that has been needing to be done. And once you peel away so many of those layers of mother, wife, educator, whatever job you may have in your daily existence, there's still some creative impulse that needs scratching, if you will. And this book has been that for me. And I've watched so many of my friends do amazing things over the last couple of years, as they've also satisfied the same need within them. So I felt like it was a real celebration of creativity and self-exploration and journey, and so it's been amazing. I feel so blessed and lucky to be surrounded by the wonderful tribe that I have around me. It's been speechless. I'm speechless.
Yes. And now you're going to get to do it on the other coast. Yes. So you head to Boston. I
head to Boston on Wednesday. Yep. Yeah. And I'll be at Orchard House, which I can't even imagine, signing books later this week.
Talk about the layers there of the imagining and the history and your childhood and their childhood. Like, oh my gosh, you probably feel like a time machine.
I do. And actually, I was in Orchard House last month, quickly. Long story, but I had been back in Massachusetts for something to do with educating meeting, education meeting, and I had stopped in Orchard House with some advanced copies of the novel to give to staff members because they've been such amazing support. And there was a drama camp happening with these girls running around, and I wanted to say to them, who knows where you'll be in 30 or however many years. That was me.
Yeah.
And whatever thing they may hold dear in their heart that they think is crazy and unattainable, I wanted to say, you could do this. You might be, you can do this. Follow that voice, follow that need. And so, yes, it's going to be amazing to be back there later this week on the level of kind of seeing where it all started again, and also seeing friends near and dear to me, family who I don't get to see as often as I'd like. So I can't wait. I'm really excited. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, well, wonderful. Wonderful.
You.
Well, congratulations on the release of the Other Alcott. Must readers, please do check it out. It is an absolute delight. And Elise Hooper, thank you so much for being with us.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Happy reading, everyone. Enjoy.
Hello again, Must Readers. So we kept talking, and it was a really great conversation. So I thought we'd just quick go back on record and just do a little addendum, a little, kind of extra little bit. So we were, Elise Hooper, you are doing another project.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about what you're working on now.
Well, so I have a new story that will be coming out late in 2018, and it's about the life of Dorothea Lange, who's a documentary photographer from the 30s and 40s, and you would recognize her work. Her most famous photograph is called Migrant Mother. You can Google it and you see it, and it's become a meme over the years. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's stunning.
It is.
It's like incredibly moving.
It is. And there is an amazing story behind it. The woman who was photographed has a very compelling story. But Dorothea Lange, her life is one of great sort of creative exploration as well. And she was a real firecracker. And kind of at the loosest description of her life, I mean, she was a documentary photographer. She started off as a portrait photographer and led this really lovely life in San Francisco, photographing San Francisco's really sort of old moneyed families. At that point, old money was still pretty new money. But
in San Francisco,
exactly.
Yes.
This is about 1920, we're talking at this point. And then the Great Depression hits, and it turns everything upside down for Americans all over the country. And Dorothea Lange and her husband, Maynard Dixon, a painter, were no exception. And so she evolved from portrait work to really street photography and documenting what people's lives looked like, especially these migrant workers coming in to California from other states. And so she spent almost a decade, really, not quite, about actually more like 6 or 7 years doing that type of work. And then she's fired, of course, by the government because what it boils down to, in my opinion, is she was a difficult woman to work with. She was the only woman working in that group. There was one other at a point, but because she knew what she wanted, she was considered difficult. And so the government fires her, and they rehire her during the Japanese internment to document the internment of the Japanese, to show how peaceful it was. They were hoping it would be sort of wonderful PR for that actually many of these people had wanted to be evacuated, which we know was not the case.
Right.
And Dorothea Lange quickly saw that and was horrified by what she was seeing and took pretty subversive photos that then the government saw, was horrified by, impounded them till early 2000s and fired her again. And so she just has this really interesting story as well of discovery. And it all felt like this sort of, it all came together because one of the first biographies I looked at about Dorothea Lange, the first sentence said, like one of America's other famous women artists, Louisa May Alcott, Dorothea Lange was self-taught. And I, at this point, finished Little Women was like, this story is sort of destined to be told.
The universe just left your trail of breadcrumbs.
Yeah. So again, just a woman or women in the case again of the Alcotts, these women who were sort of pioneering a new territory, really, both as a woman author and then a painter in the Other Alcott. These women were really forging their own paths and having to kind of make the rules up as they went. So Dorothea Lange fit right into this pattern of women and interested in a creative discovery and also kind of claiming that title of artist. I would say all of them really grappled with the tension between producing work for commercial enterprise and producing creative work that kind of spoke to their soul, and the tension that can exist between those two. So that has been something that really interested me. I think it's hard sometimes to claim that title as artist for yourself. You kind of feel like you need certain accolades or to have reached a certain point in your career, and someone's maybe going to stamp artist on your chest with a blue ribbon, and it really doesn't work that way. It's about discovery. It is about lifelong learning and being open to creativity. That's what makes an artist. And I think so many of us doing creative work can be really intimidated by that title of artist. So Dorothea Lange struggled with it for a long time. She did not say she was an artist for a long time. She just said she was a photographer, a craftswoman. And May, I think, struggled with that a bit, Louisa. And I struggled with it in my own life, kind of coming to terms with that and kind of owning that title and claiming, yes, artist. So just the beat continued with these characters who continued to fascinate me.
Yeah, and such like incredibly universal questions too. You know, this question of, well, this is my passion, but it's maybe not valued financially.
Right.
Oh, so do I support this passion? Is it the real thing if it doesn't make money?
Absolutely.
And like, is it, you know, and giving yourself permission to spend the time, because so often it's really just the question of time.
It's true. So I had gone to my husband about 4.5 years ago and said, so I have this, I know we thought when our youngest goes off to kindergarten next year that we thought I'd go back to teaching part-time, but I really want to try to write a novel. I need a year to do this. And he said yes, like emphatically, without skipping a beat. I almost didn't expect it. I think I expected him to say, what do you know about novel writing? Or why not work part-time and pursue writing on the side? Or novel writing, not a great career path that proves successful for many people. These were all very valid points he could have brought up, and he didn't. And that's made me think so much about being that yes person for people around me who are interested in creative pursuit, not tossing out all the roadblocks that people can encounter, but saying, yes, you absolutely should pursue this. And trust me, it felt nuts, and it would have been great to have had a job with money, but I feel very lucky that it all worked out. And I would absolutely always encourage people that you've got to peel back those layers sometimes and find what speaks to you and do everything you can to try to answer it.
Absolutely. Oh, well, that is a beautiful, empowering point to end on. And so, yes, Must Reader, if you hear that voice, you have our permission.
Yes.
Go.
Email me. I am behind you 100%.
Sounds great. Well, thank you again, Elise
Thank you
Hooper,
so much.
the Other Alcott.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.